Dear Diary, today I take the next step in being an ADHD life coach at Indigo Hub. I can't believe it's happening. I want to build, create, and discover a place for us to truly be ourselves. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diaries. Dear Diary, welcome to the Indigo Diaries, and welcome to our Series 3, The World Through Our Eyes, with your host, Natasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about ADHD through others and our own experiences. And this week we're back in ADHD Awareness Month. And can you believe it? We're back after 1 week. I cannot believe it. I actually followed through with my word, and I'm really excited to bring some very good experts this season. And to be honest, this month, because this month just shows us that it's really important to talk about these subjects and to talk about this. And I love it when I reach out through something that I'm not always so great at, which is social media. And I reach out and people reach out to me who I've never met or literally on the other side of the world, bring together to talk about really interesting and really massive topics in the ADHD community about spreading awareness. And we have another fantastic guest on today, and that is Holly. So welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
So today we'll be doing an open mind session where we discuss a topic of interest and have reflections and awareness. But before we kind of dive into what today's about, let me tell you a bit about Holly. Holly is a former public and private school teacher and has 20 plus years of experience in the field of coaching and special education. Currently, she is an integrative executive function coach with Patient Minds, of which she's the owner and the founder. Holly uses multiple modalities when working with clients, knowing individuals are most successful when providing with alternative ways of approaching a situation or task. She takes a holistic view with her coaching, knowing that all areas of life are connected to create well-being. Holly possesses several hours of mindful training to include specific training to support those who are neurodiverse. She believes each individual has a unique learning style and invests in a building strength-focused relationship with her clients to create a safe environment. And if you want the full bio, then please look below, as it is all there. And I know that, well, Holly, as soon as you brought this kind of topic to me, I know this was kind of a huge one for me, because when I was told by my coach to start trying mindfulness, so that's what we're talking about today, mindfulness, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, what is that? And when you came to me, by this point, I've been 2 years into my kind of discovery of ADHD, and I really undiscovered what mindfulness was, but also the misconceptions that goes behind mindfulness. And you really, I left our conversation very kind of really excited for this. So kind of tell me and the listeners what mindfulness is from your point of view.
Sure. I mean, I really learned when I first started on this path of learning about mindfulness. Jon Kabat-Zinn was one of the authors and one of the teachers that I really started to follow his work. And so I don't want to claim the definition as my own, but he really talks about, it's a paraphrase, as paying attention and in the present moment, and being aware of yourself and your surroundings in the present moment. So it can mean so many different things. And there are a lot of different teachers out there and experts who are very wise that all have a little bit of a different approach to it.
I love that, present in the moment. I think that's because I know a lot of my clients, when they think of mindfulness, they go straight to meditation. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is often something that people think. In fact, I was going to ask you today, you kind of beat me to it, but if I said to you the word mindfulness, what happens in your mind or your body, or what do you experience when you hear that word? So I'd love to ask you, when it was brought up to you to practice it, what was your reaction?
I'll keep it short. I said, that was a great question. I first said mindfulness. I can't sit for 10 minutes. There is no on earth way I'm going to sit on a like, honestly thought that I had to sit on a mat with my legs crossed, like clear my mind, some sort of yoga. And that's honestly what I thought of it. And I shut it off straight away.
I would say your reaction is probably, it is very common for those of us that have trouble sitting still, or that are, when we're new to the practice, or even if there's a lot going on in our lives, if our minds are very busy and active. So mindfulness can really include a lot of different practices. There are so many, I won't even be able to name them all or touch on all of them today. So I would just love to start by encouraging each person that listens to this to really explore, to don't be afraid to explore what's out there. And if the first one or two or couple that you try don't resonate with you, or you actually feel that it's increasing your anxiety, if you're trying to force yourself to sit still and it's activating your mind and making you feel unsafe, to keep trying and looking for other modalities and other ways to practice. I'm also a yoga instructor, and so for me, mindful movement is one of my best practices. Again, that may not resonate with someone else, but there's so many ways to approach this, from listening to music, looking at art, doing art, mindful art, being in nature, breathing practices, the traditional, sitting on the cushion or on a yoga mat with your legs crossed and meditating, or, listening to someone guide you through a meditation or a guided visualization. So I just want to encourage people that there's so many different ways to practice this. I work with clients who say, I'm such a terrible practitioner, I'm failing at mindfulness. And to me, the fact that there's an awareness that they want to try it and practice it is a huge step. And I personally, I could be a mindfulness rule breaker when I say this, but I don't believe that there's a way to fail. I don't believe there's a way to fail with it, because part of mindfulness is becoming self-aware and trying to practice not judging yourself, your thoughts, or those around you.
I love that. And I remember writing that down, and I actually used it with a client, the mindfulness rule breaker. And I'll touch upon that in a minute. But I first want to ask you kind of what, like you touched upon there, what's kind of important about mindfulness, right? And it's obviously about being present in the moment. What is fundamentally important about it in our daily lives?
That's a fantastic question. There's so much that mindfulness can help us with. And namely, when we're in the middle of ADHD Awareness Month, attention. So trying to focus attention, or understanding, do I need to narrowly focus my attention on a task, or am I in a situation where I'm going to broaden my attention so I can take in a little bit more of the big picture? It's a practice of being aware of our attention. It's a practice that can help us develop self-awareness. So we may become aware of our own internal responses or reactions, or we may become more aware of those around us. And along with that, I would use the word discernment. So we begin to discern where our attention is going, where our thoughts are going, what are things that we're reactive to, or what are triggers for us, so that through the practice that awareness can help us become more regulated and feel like we have a little bit more, I don't know if I would want to use the word control, but kind of control of what's going on in our emotional lives and our attentional lives.
Yeah, and it's like I always say that my coach said to me, which it gets to me, it's like being able to put on the brakes and then choose the next step, rather than going through and then afterwards going, oh, why did I do that?
Exactly. It's that little pause. Even if 3 deep breaths feels too hard, just that, planting your feet and one deep breath, or one inhale and exhale, even if you're not in a state where you can change your breathing, it just gives you that moment to make a decision rather than to just kind of react. And often those reactions are from a place of coping that we may have developed a long time ago, or internal beliefs, and they're habitual. And because they're habitual, that means we're often not aware of what we're doing, or we'll do or say something consistently in a situation that we regret or don't feel good about, but it feels like it's outside of our power to stop or change it. So mindfulness can just be that simple little pause to start to feel like you have a little bit of choice to do things differently.
Yeah, it's that space. I call it the space between the thought and the action. And it's just that, even if it's that 10-second space, then you've got something to be able to take that action that you want to take rather than regretting it later. What, like, with all kind of your experiences in executive function coach and in education, like what is challenging about this for people that are on the kind of ADHD or neurodiversity?
Great question. And I think part of it was, you being you being honest and vulnerable with your reaction to mindfulness being suggested. And it's a concept and a word and a practice that's out there so much more now. And I think there is this idea that it has to be meditation and it has to be still and it has to be quiet. So sometimes it's just initially getting over those beliefs that people have or students have, that it has to look a certain way. And I think, other things to consider too are, another person that I followed his work is David Trelevin, who has done a lot with trauma-informed mindfulness. So we have to be very respectful, very aware, and very careful that if people have, and that's probably a whole nother conversation, but if people have trauma in their background or even in their current lives, things about mindfulness can make the practice feel very unsafe. So it's an awareness. If you were a teacher or you're guiding someone through a practice, or if you're trying to practice on your own, of just being aware of what's happening in your mind and sensations in your body. Are you feeling agitated or anxious or afraid or unsettled? So, and then the other piece that I see is, in the world of neurodiversity, mindfulness can feel very abstract at times, depending on the practice that's being offered. So I've studied with Sue Hutton, who has really narrowed down her practices to be a lot more concrete so that it feels more understandable, because I've had people just look at me and say, I don't understand. What is this?
Yeah.
Listening to my inner thoughts and feeling sensations in my body. So, the work too can be to try to break it down into smaller pieces and make it more concrete and more understandable.
Yeah. And I find that, like, especially when you've got a fast brain, right? So like a lot of people with ADHD, I know mine is very fast, that our breaks naturally, like, like Ned Hallowell says, right? We've got bicycle brakes for our brain. And that fundamentally describes ADHD, because we don't have the strongest brakes. So how would you say that mindfulness is even, so important for people with ADHD?
Well, I think, to your point, that mindfulness can help with the awareness of that, because sometimes we're not even aware about the racing thoughts or the anxiety or the challenge focusing. So it can feel so large that it may not even feel doable. And honestly, I'm reminding myself and clients that I work with that this is a lifetime practice. There's not some place that we achieve. There's not, oh, I finally got it right, or I can finally call myself a mindfulness practitioner. It's a lifetime practice. And so just starting with that, with understanding that the second that we learn something or feel like maybe we've mastered something, there's going to be that next step that we want to take. But just knowing that it's going to be very small steps, and that the practice might look very different for you than it does for someone else, And when I'm working with someone, what we're really looking to do is kind of help that person discern when did your mind feel most focused. So maybe it's someone standing in tree pose, maybe it's listening to a particular song, Maybe it's drawing your breath with colored markers or colored pencils. So it's not that I or anyone else out there has all the answers. It's offering practices and then reflecting together or sharing observations I have of someone to help them begin to question, what is working for me? When do I feel just a moment of that self-awareness or a little moment of that attention coming through that I don't normally feel?
I love that, because what you're doing there is you're switching it to, rather than, you know, oh, you've bought something off Amazon, right? You bought something off Amazon. What could you have done in that moment? Oh, well, I bought some, rather than looking at you saying, when do you feel most focused? So you're, rather than going, right, meditate in that moment. And a lot of people with ADHD, I know me, there's nothing stopping me in that moment when I see something on Amazon that I want to buy. But what you're doing is that you're creating that positive experience of when you do feel focused, when it is working, and then how can we bring that into times when it's not?
That's exactly what I was just sitting here thinking, is that it can feel sometimes boring or tedious to practice in moments that there's not a lot of energy or racing thoughts. And those are the moments to practice, because that is when, in the moments when you need to apply it, when it's a little bit more intense, or you really do need to focus your attention, you want to have it be that habitual. So instead of that habitual, whatever you're doing that you don't like or you want to change, you want to create that new habit. And it's not going to be like, oh, I sit down for 5 minutes and follow my breath and follow my thoughts, and by tomorrow I'm not going to order that Amazon package anymore. It's just, I will say it so many times, it's a slow work of progress. And the awareness, just that day when you think, oh, I really want to click order, I'm aware that I don't want to do this, and you do it anyway, that's still success. That's still progress, because you're starting to notice that shift in your brain. So it's about being aware and being kind and gentle with yourself in the process as well, and building those skills so that when you really do need them, they're there. It's like if you were, if you're riding your bike for enjoyment all the time, and then on the path you see someone that needs medical attention, that's not the moment when you want to learn to ride on a bike. You want to be able to hop on your bike and, ride and call for help or whatever you need to do. So it's the same thing with these skills.
And then the word that I keep hearing you say is practice, the practice of it. And I always say, like, you wouldn't ask a marathon runner to go and run on, like, you wouldn't just say, get up and go run a marathon, right? There takes so much to it. Exactly. But then we just expect ourselves to just be able to do it.
Exactly. And I remember even in yoga teacher training, I try to put myself in these uncomfortable situations so I don't forget what it feels like. And I remember a wise teacher sharing with me, okay, you're frustrated because you're trying to get in this particular pose. And guess what? As soon as you master it, you're going to want to, be working on the next pose. It's kind of like what I said earlier. There's just always that next thing to be working on. So it's a continual process of growth. And it is a lifetime practice. I mean, when I think about yoga, I call it a practice now, because I just don't think there's ever truly going to be mastery. It's just a continue, because everything about us continues to change. So our practice is going to change. Yeah. And if you get bored, this is another place where I feel like I break the rules. If you get bored, then feel free to change what you're doing. There's no rule that says, there are certain practices that believe you must do the same thing every single day. And not only that, but increase your time for longer and longer. But even for myself, I have to change what I'm doing sometimes, so that I'm still getting that mindfulness practice, but my brain needs something new to be able to keep me engaged.
And I love that, like, she's giving you permission to change it and to do it your way. And when we come back after the break, we're going to kind of dive into kind of the benefits, and then also kind of how we actually get that practice going, but with that mindfulness rule breaker style, because I absolutely love that. But Thank you so much, Holly. I mean, I've wrote so many notes already of stuff I've learned, so I can only imagine that people are as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and we're out. If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out. And we're back. And we literally just had an emergency in my house where my cat was being brought a bird in, and I just had to go and take a break. And Holly, bless her, just stayed there for me, and I just had to go and act on impulse there. But we're back. And if you've not heard the first half, then go back, because it was a really great episode talking to Holly. So welcome back, Holly.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were talking about mindfulness, and something that I really thought about it is like, what I find is we were talking about that misconception of mindfulness, but a lot of people don't understand the benefits of what it could bring, which is why I feel that a lot of people, especially with ADHD, don't want to do it or don't see it because they don't know the impact. So for you, what are the benefits of mindfulness practice?
I think there are a number of them. And again, I just feel like I always say it can be different for anyone. So if you had a coach that was encouraging you to practice it and their reasons may have been different than someone else, I think some of the most common ones can be really getting to know yourself and developing a sense of self-awareness. As I mentioned before, these habitual reactions or even responses that we have, sometimes we're not even aware of them. And so that's really the first step. If we're in a place where we want to make change, becoming aware of what's going on, or becoming aware of the beliefs behind it or the thoughts that are driving it, which then can also lead to handling our self-regulation, or developing self-regulation. I think sometimes what I see happen is there's that reaction, and then shame comes because a person has done something that they're not feeling so great about, or and I'm sorry to keep picking on you, but I love your example of the, ordering the Amazon item, or, just continuing to order that and not feeling good about it, or having a moment where you've not ordered it, but then a hard day when you do. And so shame can add that extra layer. So if we can work on regulating ourselves, then sometimes we can start to avoid that path, or what I sometimes call a shame attack. And I think it just can help us, the awareness can help us discern what's going on. Is it beliefs? Is it anxiety? Is it shame? Is it discomfort because we're being asked to do something challenging that's not really hard or harming us, but it just feels uncomfortable because it's something new? And I think learning to work with our focus and attention can also feel rewarding as well.
Yeah, I think what you said there, it's that first key, isn't it? Because the awareness then brings the regulation, right? But in order to regulate your behavior or your actions or your thoughts or whatever it is, you've got to discern what's going on and why it's going on. If I, for instance, going back to the Amazon, you always use Amazon because it's probably the easiest one, but also one of the most trapping ones, especially at night. Well, when I'm going on, I just think, oh wow, I want this now, right? I don't think, oh well, actually, can you afford it? Is it something you actually want and need? And is this the right time to order it, or can you wait? But at that moment, my impulse takes over, and then afterwards, the shame comes of, why did I order that? What made me order that? But if we just had that space or that pause you talked about, then our actions can meet up with our intentions.
And it could be too that I'm not saying this is the case with you, but sometimes there's something else that is behind it. So maybe in this case of ordering the package, maybe it's a go-to for a thought that came up that made you feel uncomfortable, and having something new appear, within 24 hours is more exciting than facing that thought, or whatever it is, whether it's being on our phones, reading a book. It's all about understanding, well, why am I doing that thing? What's behind this? Am I making a choice, or is this a default to maybe avoid something else too?
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? But if we don't create that space, we're never going to figure out what it is or why it's happening. And I always say that coaching is like an intentional pause, right? It's an intentional, we're having a space to do it. But then if you could do that in your daily life, think about the choices and stuff that you can get from that.
Yeah. I think too, there can be just more of a sense of ease about our day if we're developing that awareness. If we're brushing our teeth and we realize we're holding our breath, and then maybe connecting that to some racing thoughts or some uncomfortable thoughts or an uncomfortable scenario. So just all of these little moments of awareness can bring sometimes more ease into our day, more peacefulness too.
Yeah. The word that I heard you say was connection. Connecting what's going on in your body to your mind and that whole person, rather than just looking at what's in front of you or what's here or what's going wrong. It's just about connecting that to create that choice, to create that. And then if you do need to regulate, knowing what to do.
Exactly. And to your point, I was just thinking, it's not, I've worked with people that think it means they're no longer going to feel anxiety. They're no longer going to feel depression. They're no longer going to feel shame. They're going to be able to focus instantly. And it's not a cure. I view it more as a toolbox. So your custom toolbox might look different than someone else's, so that when those hard things of life appear, you have some tools and some skills to work through it. It's not going to erase them. If something happens that causes grief or anxiety, mindfulness is a practice you can apply to that. It's not going to take away the grief or the anxiety. And I think that's another thing that sometimes can get confusing, that we think, oh, it's going to take away all the hard things. It doesn't. It's tools and skills to help us navigate through those things.
Yeah. And I find that I didn't realize at the time what my coach was saying was so important, because I tried then going into strategies, but they weren't working because I wasn't pausing to recognize I needed them. So for me, mindfulness is the first step, being able to pause and create that space to then be able to put something in place.
Yeah. And I love that you use the word pause too, because I was just thinking with one person I was working with, we just stopped using the word mindfulness. There was just too much pressure that came with that word. So I started using the word pause. Okay, let's pause. Can you just take a breath? Can you breathe in and out one time, or 3 times, or whatever you feel you have the capacity to do right now? Sometimes I just have to throw out that word altogether to remove all that pressure that comes with it, or expectations that it can bring.
Yeah. And I'm going to go an extra step further and say pause for one of my clients also had that. So I used the word space, because it was like the space between the action, because he didn't understand the definition of pause. So the space between the thought and the action. And then that was like, oh, okay, so I have got, so he'd go, oh, where's my space? And then, and that's the thing about it. It's about finding, and I suppose that kind of leads into the next question. What I really like is mindfulness rule breaker, and how do people go on to, kind of start it or build that toolbox?
Yeah, that can feel very overwhelming. That's a really good point to bring up. And I think the first thing I will say is, if you are at a place where you're thinking about or getting ready to start a practice, please know that there's going to be some discomfort in it. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, or that you are doing something wrong, our brains like to keep on doing the same thing. We don't want to be disrupted on our habitual paths. And so just the act of thinking about it, or looking at an app, or finding a YouTube video, or finding a yoga class, or whatever it is you choose, can bring some discomfort. And it's a very, very normal part of the process. And I think from my perspective, it doesn't get normalized enough that there's going to be discomfort when we get ready to start something new and bring about change. There's going to be discomfort and resistance. So I think if you're someone that's thinking about getting started, I would just encourage you to think about, when do you notice that you're kind of in your flow or in your spot when you're most at ease? And is there anything then that might connect to that? I guess I would use the caveat, if you're probably not something really stimulating like gaming or, videos, if you're aware that you're using that as an escape. But if you love to mountain bike, if you love to hike, if you like yoga, if you love art, if you're a musician. So kind of think about what that outlet or that interest is that you have that can bring some ease, or just those moments of kind of connection with yourself. So you can kind of try to start on your own, looking for some of the connections, the things that bring you peace of mind. Or maybe you start to follow a couple of people, they're on social media or their work, and maybe they have a free class, or maybe there's an app and you decide to just kind of scroll through and look for a couple that look interesting. If you know that you can kind of tolerate sitting and focusing on your breath, you may be able to learn a practice on your own. If you want a guided visualization, then you may want to find an app, or even record yourself giving one and then listen to that. So it's kind of a big question to answer. And so I'm curious if I could ask you, what was your process like when you were trying to get started? Or maybe you're still in that investigating phase and trying to get started too.
What I did I'm one of these people where I will try anything. And I can't say, that's just this one of my core values. I have to try it. So when my coach brought it to me, I was like, no. So then I thought about it, and I was like, one of my values is trying new things. And it's really important to me that I always try, and if I don't like it, then that's fine. Then I can move on, right, about growth. So I just tried very short bursts, and literally 10 seconds. And because I wouldn't know what to do, I did guided. I did a minute, and then I went up to 2 minutes. Then I got to 3 minutes, and 3 to 4 minutes was just enough for me. So then I just started doing that more often, right? But I hacked it onto something. So on my lunch break, I would do it. After work, I would do it. Before I went to bed, I would do it. And then I just did that every day. And then when I kind of got that, I knew that I could pause. So then what I started to do was then add things onto that. So I'd pause, but then instead of doing a mindfulness meditation, I would listen to, okay, what's my body telling me? And I would do a lot of self-talk. And then, I call it my deep dive, where I would dive in and what's my body doing? What's my thoughts doing? What's my, how am I feeling today? And all that sort of stuff. And I would do that when I went to the toilet, not that everyone needed to know that, but that was a habit that I already had. So I was doing it. And then when I could do that, then I would start to do it in a moment. So before I got angry, I'd be like, okay, so I need to pause. What's going on? I can feel myself getting angry and stuff like that. But what I noticed first, and I'm still, I'm still perfecting it now. I mean, perfect is not even there, but I still have to practice. I still do the practices of the 3-minute meditation 3 times a day. And I still do check in myself or deep dive when I go to the toilet, because I have to keep building that skill, because I did stop it for 2 months. And then it went, and then I started reacting more and buying more, and then all those things that just weren't working anymore because I wasn't continuously practice. And I said to my coach, well, I've gone backwards. And she said, but you're not practicing anymore. And I said, oh yeah, because it's never just going to be a skill that gets there.
Exactly. I know, I'm so glad I asked you, because you just outlined an example it's just perfect. You started small. because it felt too overwhelming to you to dive in and try to sit for a 20 or 30-minute meditation. You started small, you found what worked for you, and you built up your capacity. And then I feel like success builds on success. When we start to notice those positive changes, it's not going to be so hard to ask the brain to do something that initially, we put up the brick wall and it's like, no way, I'm not going to feel that discomfort. This is too hard. But if we start to feel those little successes and build on them, it's exactly what you found. And now you've seen positive change. And what I also love about your story is you didn't get there overnight. And also that you're an imperfect human, just like all the rest of us. And we all get away from our practices. Yeah. And sometimes there's beauty in that, because when we come back to it, we either decide to change what we're doing, or we notice something new. We learn something new about ourselves. So, coming away from the practice can sometimes be just as important as coming back to it. So not getting stuck in that, oh, I've fallen away and now I can't start again. The other thing I wanted to just make sure I throw in there too is, as you're looking for resources, really research and make sure that the people you're going to work with or listen to are trained. And it kind of goes back to that reason where if you have trauma or other things that you're struggling with in your life, you want to make sure that you're working with safe and highly trained people. I know that's a little off topic, but I just wanted to make sure I kind of got that in, because that is a really important piece of it as well.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you got that in, because I actually wrote that down to say, because it can, if you're not in the right place or headspace, then it can go the opposite way. Yeah, so I agree with you. So, well, that kind of wraps up what we've been talking about here. And any kind of last thoughts?
No, I've just really enjoyed this conversation. And I love that, the examples you've given are just kind of right in line with the topic that we've been talking about today. So I've just really appreciated our conversation. Thank you for having me.
No, and I think it goes back to what you said in the intro, right? So when I read your intro, I was like, oh my goodness, it's about finding your modalities and about finding your way of doing it. And that is what I wish I'd met you a few years ago when I started because that would have helped me out. But it is, because if we have that pre-connect, we don't do it, and then we lose out because of the stuff that it can do for us. And
exactly.
So thank you so much. So
sure, thank you.
You gave us an encouragement, like a little encouragement that you wanted to share. So do you want to share that, or do you want me to?
Sure. I'm okay to go ahead and share it, if that's okay. So I just wanted to kind of end with this thought. It's maybe a little bit longer than just a quick thought, but discomfort does not mean that you're doing something wrong. So as you develop tools of self-awareness and mindfulness, you're going to build up your capacity to follow the trail markers that are going to lead you past your barriers, your beliefs, and your habits that need to be slowly and gently addressed in order for you to continue to grow and change. And instead of kind of hiding in that shame, with time and practicing your skills, you can build that capacity to feel empowered by the understanding and insight you gain each time you muster up the courage to peel back another layer. And this is a practice that takes courage. So know that you never have to do it alone, and that there is always support out there for you in this process.
Did you write that? I love that. That is, oh yeah, that sums up today just perfectly. Not perfectly, progress, but it sums up today really nicely. So where can I'll put all these things below, but I always like to give people a chance. Where can people find you?
Sure. My website it's patient, and then it's dash, like a hyphen, minds.com. So patient-minds.com. Thanks for asking.
No worries, Holly. And if you feel like you resonated with Holly, then please, go to the links below and reach out, because this is definitely a conversation that I'll remember. And I actually thought about it after we met. Like, I was doing my mindfulness and I was like, I'm a rule breaker. and it is, it's about being a rule breaker and finding your way of doing it so that you can make the best of it for your life. And thank you so much, Holly. Absolute honor.
Thank you. It's been an honor to talk with you as well.
Okay, so in 2 weeks, or no, in 1 week, for the last week of ADHD Awareness Month, we'll be dropping an episode from season 1, which I'm very excited about. And if you are interested in coming on as a guest, or you want to hear your story from series 1, or you are an expert in the ADHD community and you want to bring questions or experiences, then please reach out through our social media avenues. I hope you come back, learn, listen, and experience the world through not my eyes, but ours. Have a great week and be a rule breaker in mindfulness, because you never know what's on the other side. And we're out.
Dear Diary, as Indigo Hub's process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more experience, and more ways to see the world through our own eyes? I think this journey will be... Shh.